There's no one else is free.
Recording in progress.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's school committee meeting. It is Thursday, March 7th, 2024, and we will begin with administrative business, the consent agenda. Are there any questions regarding the consent agenda? Seeing none, would someone like to move it?
I'll move it.
Thank you, Helen. Is there a second?
Yes, I second it.
Sarah seconds. Sarah, your vote.
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
Helen?
Yes.
Stephen?
Yes.
Valerie?
Abstain.
Natalia?
Yes.
Mariah?
Yes.
And I also vote yes. All right, with that, we will now move to possible vote to approve the second amendment to the lease with Temple Ohabai Shalom, 1187 Beacon Street, Brookline, Massachusetts, for FY 2025, including more hours of use to accommodate the planned BEEP full school day. Any questions regarding this item?
I'll move it.
Seeing none, Helen moves it. Do we have a second? Andy seconds. Sarah, your vote?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
Helen?
Yes.
Stephen?
Yes.
Valerie?
Yes.
Natalia?
Yes.
Mariah?
Yes.
And I also vote yes.
Thanks to Susan and Margaret for negotiating this.
And with that, we will move to the superintendent's report. or while we have a little bit of time, Helen, any subcommittee, I know this is a little out of order, but
Oh.
we're okay now.
Yeah, let's, let me think.
All right. Superintendent's reports.
Sorry about that. I left an important note on my desk. So for tonight's superintendent's update. So that's not me. For tonight's superintendent's update, we want to acknowledge our Brookline Women of the Year for 2024. Congratulations to our very own Linda Kirby and Mindy Paolo for being named Brookline Women of the Year 2024. Linda is a lifelong Brookliner whose commitment to the community is unmatched. Retiring this year after 37 years at the PSB, she has worn many, many hats, from Lincoln House Secretary to overseeing special awards and scholarships to working with the Office of Student Services. As for Mindy, she's been serving as the Director of English Language Education for the PSB. Mindy has provided essential support and guidance to hundreds of students and families. For 22 years, she has advocated for, taught, celebrated, befriended, and supported thousands of English learners and their families. So we want to say congratulations to both Linda and Mindy for this outstanding accomplishment. Next, we want to acknowledge Sasha Palmer for her school being appointed to the Governor's School Meals Nutrition Standards Commission. Congratulations to PSB Director of Food Services, Sasha Palmer, who is one of the 6 members appointed by the governor to serve on the School Meals Nutrition Standards Commission. The commission will review the nutrition standards followed by K-12 schools in the Commonwealth and nutrition requirements to prevent chronic disease and optimize the short-term and long-term health of children, among other things. Additionally, it will also make recommendations to increase nutrition of school foods, including providing vegetarian and vegan options, accommodating religious, cultural, medical, and non-medical dietary restrictions. We wish Sasha good luck in this new role. Roland Hayes Science Fair 2024. The Roland Hayes School held its 5th annual Science Fair on Saturday, March 2nd. The Science Fair is a proud Hayes School tradition and a wonderful learning opportunity for all students. 95 young scientists, the highest number yet from K through 8th grade, explored how hearing changes with age, investigated the science behind the Stroop test, built rocket blasters and hovercraft, tracked the number of trees in the world, cracked the Rubik's Cube code, and so much more. A true testament to the school's strong and supportive community spirit. The fair was attended by 300 plus family members, teachers, administrators, and friends. And here are a few images from Science Fair. Lincoln Culture Fest. The Lincoln School celebrated its first ever Culture Fest, a celebration of the broad and diverse cultural heritage of the school's members. The event featured over 20 tables of food, music, art, and traditions of the many cultures that make up the Lincoln School community. The event aimed at invoking feelings of joy, discovery, and learning, and ultimately foster deeper understanding and connection among all in the community. Lincoln's Culture Fest was organized by the Life Committee and sponsored by the Lincoln PTO. About Life Lincoln Initiative for Equity is a parent caregiver-led volunteer group that aims to create space for all community voices by building connections and collaborative relationships throughout Lincoln School and beyond. And here are a few images from Lincoln Culture Fest. Massachusetts High School Drama Festival 2024, the BHS Drama Society's entry into the Massachusetts High School Drama Festival 2024. It's the Thoughts That Count Dracula was recognized with 6 all-star company rounds at the preliminary round last week. So we want to say congratulations to Louisa, Chloe, Ben, Sammy, Mahilo, and Kuman for their outstanding accomplishments there. Parent Workshop. The PSB Department of Guidance and Clinical Service is excited to partner with the Massachusetts Partnership for Youth to hold the Parent Workshop, Identifying Anxiety and Supportive Effective Regulation, on Wednesday, March 27th at 6 p.m. over Zoom. With an increasing number of children experiencing elevated anxiety levels, this workshop aims to support parents in identifying red flags, symptoms, and indicators that their child or children may be struggling to regulate and manage big feelings. And we have some information about the speaker. Her name is Julia B. Cullen, and she will be leading the session again on March 27th at 6 p.m. BASE will be hosting a spring break camp August 16th through 19th for kids aged 5 through 12. The spring break camp will be held at the Roland Hayes School and will feature various activities such as acting, singing, dancing, arts and crafts, Lego adventures, and Metrocraft, I'm sorry. And we want to conclude our superintendent's remarks tonight in remembrance. We want to acknowledge our very own Karen B. Miller, a lifetime caretaker who devoted over 4 decades, as a nurse at the public schools of Brookline, most extensively at the Lawrence School, where she tended to the medical, psychological, and professional needs of students and staff alike. She provided CPR and practical training to literally generations of babysitters and nurses, as well as participated in a town-wide school leadership group. Her tenure was marked by high regard in which she was held by students, parents, administrators, teachers, and nurses across the district. And we also express our condolences to her family, both Jed and Dominique. And her obituary has been shared and is in the Boston Globe. So we want to acknowledge a life well lived and work well served to the public schools of Brookline. My calendar for school visits, recently completed and upcoming, is here. I won't read through all the dates, but we'll jump to a few of the images. Again, this notion of student engagement and looking at engagement as part of my work with principals this year. And I get so immersed in the conversations that I'm having with leaders and teachers that sometimes I forget to take images, but I did capture a few from both FRR and Baker this week. Students were working on, some were working on memoirs and writing table of contents. There were some students that were in science class or in their 3rd grade class working on drawing whales and dolphins and labeling their pictures and graphs. So seeing lots of great learning happening in and about. And with that, that concludes the superintendent's remarks for tonight. There any comments before we get to the spotlight?
Ellen?
Yeah, just a quick comment that I'd like to join you in the condolences to the family of Karen Miller. They are Brookline residents, and you know, it's really sad, and she was amazing. She really worked extremely hard. The minute you walked into Lawrence, you would see her there right on the side, you know, always available, and it's a big loss to Brookline and to the Lawrence School. Thank you.
Didn't see any others. So with that, we will turn our attention to our Spotlight on Excellence. This evening, the Spotlight on Excellence focuses on the work of clinical teams throughout the district, which includes school counselors, school adjustment counselors, social workers, and school psychologists. These teams provide a continuum of support to students to advance their belonging and social emotional development and respond to their mental health needs. Joining us this evening is Matt Dubois, our Senior Director of Clinical Services and Social Emotional Learning. Matt will introduce us to some of the members of these teams, as well as share more information about the very important work they do each and every day on behalf of students. At this time, I will turn the mic over to Matt.
Well, thank you, Dr. Guillory, and good evening, school committee. And so I just want to begin by expressing my very deep appreciation for giving the opportunity this evening to be able to shine the light on the incredible work that our teams are doing. This timing is actually really good. So this is actually National School Social Worker Week and month. And so the timing of this works out really, really nicely. What I want to begin with is the very, very best part of my job is that I have this beautiful opportunity to work really, really closely with our school counselors, our adjustment counselors, our social workers, our psychologists, and the work that they do every single day with kids and families. It is really hard work. It is really, really challenging. It is complex. And they approach that work with such tremendous care and compassion and skill and love. It is truly, truly inspiring. And it is work that is literally life-changing. And at times it is literally life-saving. When we think about the work of our clinical teams, it's not uncommon that we sort of immediately think about the one-on-one work that they do with kids. That is absolutely a part of the work, and they do a beautiful job there. But these are also the teams, these are the folks who are actively monitoring the wellness of all of our kids. This is a group that's focusing a ton on belonging. This is a group, in a little bit, I'll talk about attendance. They're at the forefront of that work to make sure that kids are at school and they're actively engaged. This is a group that's pushing into classrooms and making sure that all kids have strong social and emotional skills. This is a group that's providing targeted support around belonging and emotional regulation and social skills. And this is a group that's working really closely with families and with guardians and with outside community agencies to make sure that kids have everything that they need in order to be successful. I know in my role, I think it's really important that I'm expressing to the community, that I'm certainly expressing to school committee about the power of the investment that we have made in mental health over the past 3 school years. We've made a really meaningful investment. And I think it's important to frame that this is absolutely making a really important, really meaningful difference in the lives of our children. And so I've had the opportunity to present to this group our universal screening data over the past several school years. And I'm really heartened to be able to look at the data and know, for example, over the past 3 years, our belonging data looks much stronger. There are more kids that are walking into the building every single day, believing foundationally they belong there. The graph on the right here, we're looking at emotional regulation. And so we ask kids, do you have a good understanding of what you're feeling? Do you understand why you're feeling what you're feeling? And maybe most importantly, when you're feeling a big thing, do you feel like you have the skills available to you to navigate them so that you can continue to do what you need to do? And so we've seen some really, really important increases in this work across time. And so this investment has absolutely been worth it. And so I'm gonna turn it over to my colleagues now, and they're really going to talk about that continuum of support that they're offering children. And I'm really excited for you all to be able to sort of take a sneak peek into the work that they do every day with kids. And so we're going to begin with Alyssa Ovadia. She is the K-2 school counselor at Hayes. Incredibly warm, kind human being that takes such incredible care of kids. And she's going to talk about the work that she's doing to push into classrooms to help teach social and emotional skills. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Alyssa.
Thank you, Matt. As Matt said, my name is Alyssa Greif-Ovadia, and I am known in our Hayes community as Mrs. O. I am trained as a social worker, and I work as one of the school counselors. I work with students in kindergarten, first and second grades, and this is my 9th year working for the public schools of Brookline. In my role, as Matt mentioned, I have the unique opportunity to work with students one-on-one, in small groups, and in their classrooms. I love my job for many reasons, and I'm excited to tell you about one of them. One of my favorite parts of my job is visiting classrooms to teach lessons about emotional regulation, problem solving, empathy, kindness, friendship, and so much more. When I visit classrooms, I teach from 2 evidence-based curriculums. One of them is called Second Step, and the other one is called the Zones of Regulation. I also create lessons based on individual classes' needs. Sometimes in our work, it's hard to know the impact of the work, but I trust in its importance, and I know that supporting strong social emotional skills are one of the most important things that we can do in our school communities. Occasionally, I receive a reminder of this. This fall, I received a wonderful email from the parent of a kindergartner. She wrote to me to share the positive impact of the lessons that I have been teaching in her son's class. I'm going to read you an excerpt of that email. I'm reading this with the family's permission, and I changed the student's name to protect their privacy. Here's a portion of that email. Just wanted to share a quick note of gratitude for you this morning. Over the past few weeks, John has been sharing a lot with us about what he's learning during your lessons. He's even tried to use some of the strategies with his little brother when he gets into the blue or red zone. This morning, he was working on making his teacher a birthday card and was getting increasingly frustrated. He put a lot of pressure on himself to make sure she would love and keep the card and wouldn't make any mistakes. In the past, he would get super frustrated. He often resorted to lashing out, throwing things, yelling things, ripping the paper, etc. This morning, he grabbed a new piece of paper and drew a picture of himself in the red zone. He worked through it and was able to make a card for his teacher that he was very proud of. We are so grateful to you for empowering him with these new tools to navigate his feelings. Thank you for all that you do. That was the email, and I'd like to end by thanking Matt and the school committee for your continued support of school counselors and social emotional programming in the district.
Thank you, Alyssa. So I'm going to turn it now over to two school counselors from Lawrence, Megan Monahan and Sam Mazzio. And they're going to talk a little bit about the work that they're doing in their building to really help kids live the Lawrence values. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Megan and Sam.
Hi, everyone. My name is Megan Monahan. I'm the K-2 guidance counselor at Lawrence. This is my third year at Lawrence and 10th year overall as a school counselor.
Hi, I'm Samantha Mazzio. I work with grades 3, 4, and 5 as the guidance counselor. This is my 5th year in Brookline and my 2nd year at Lawrence.
So Sam and I have worked in the district for several years now, and at the beginning of the year, we felt like there was a missing component in our work, and that was recognizing and celebrating the students who are upholding our values of respect, responsibility, and safety. So as you may know, most of our time is spent working with students who are struggling in some way, whether that's socially, emotionally, or behaviorally. So aside from those large group classroom lessons, we don't get a lot of one-on-one face time with the students who are doing really well and those students who are acting as role models within the classroom. So in partnership with our principal, Vanessa Bolello, we really wanted to move towards a PBIS model to support our students in a positive way as opposed to in a punitive way. So we came up with the idea of what's called Celebration Circle as a way to publicly recognize those students in a way that felt worth it to them. So we really wanted to give those role model students an incentive to continue upholding our values, while at the same time giving students who may have some maladaptive behaviors at times to actually step up as leaders. We also thought it was really important that every group of educator was involved in this nomination process. So each month, an anonymous group, anonymous to the students, they make one nomination per class. So this includes the counselors, administrators, classroom teachers, special educators, paraprofessionals, literacy specialists, math specialists, EL teachers, as well as our specials. So we really wanted to make sure that every subpopulation of students had a fair chance of being nominated for the Celebration Circle. So here's just an overview of what we have been doing. So once we get our nominations set up, we are making little personalized invitations and delivering them to the students and letting them know that they've been nominated. And then during that conversation with the kids, we let them know that they're going to attend an award ceremony. They're going to be presented with a certificate. They get photographed with Sam and myself. They get to pick a song for a playlist that will be playing in the background. They get to have a popsicle with parent permission with their other nominees. And lastly, they're recognized. We have community meeting about once a month, maybe once every 2 months. And they are publicly recognized in front of the school, as well as featured in Principal Bolello's like whole school messaging to the families. So overall, it's been, super, super positive. We've had an overwhelmingly positive response from families and from students. I've had kids walk by literally in the lunchroom and they're like, Miss Monahan, how can I get nominated? What do I have to do? Because they've seen the photos of them being recognized, and that's something that they're looking forward to, and they really want to be able to be nominated. So I don't know how visible this slideshow is. I know the font is pretty small here, but here are just some of the email responses that we've gotten from families. So overall, I can just read a couple of those. My son was all smiles when I told him the news. He even did a dance this morning to the tune of "Thank you, Miss Monahan." He's obviously very excited. What a great way to boost his self-confidence. He has been on cloud 9 this evening. We're so happy about this. Thank you for organizing such a lovely way to recognize these kids. So overall, I think the best part, and Sam, feel free to jump in if you want, the best part for me has been actually delivering the nominations of the invitation to the ceremony. The kids just completely light up and they feel so proud. So that has been really just heartwarming for us, and it makes this feel all worth it.
It does. I would absolutely agree, Megan. And I'll add, just with the 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders where they're a little older, they're now wanting to nominate each other. I think it's been really positive for our whole community, but it's really lovely to see peer-to-peer recognition, because even if we're not having peers nominate one another, peers are now hearing like, oh, I'm getting this feedback. People recognize the good that I'm bringing when I'm a role model. So it's been really powerful in terms of peer connections and staff communication as well.
Absolutely. And this is just one photo that we have of our most recent celebration circle. You can see the certificates. They're all enjoying their popsicles. So I think it's just been really great to do this, and I think we'll continue doing it throughout the years. But thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to present this to the school committee.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Sam. Thanks, Megan. And Megan and Sam, they invited me to their most recent celebration circle, and it was such a beautiful event. I think this picture does a pretty nice job of capturing the excitement that was in the air. Easily the best part of my month, being able to join that. So it's just really, really powerful work that they're doing.
Thanks, Matt.
Oh, no, thank you. All right, we're going to jump to the high school now. And so we're going to hear from Robin Toback. Robin is a school psychologist at the high school, has been in the district for a number of years, and she's going to talk about the work that she does in DreamFar.
Yes, thank you so much, Matt, and thank you to the school committee for having us this evening. So as Matt said, I am at the high school. It's my 19th year in Brookline. I worked a number of K-8 schools before transitioning to the high school in 2017. I've been a school psychologist the whole time, except I think 1 year I was guidance counselor a while back at what was Devotion. For 1 year I did that and went right back to school psychology. But when I transferred to the high school in 2017, I had heard about this program called DreamFar High School Marathon. And it's something that I had heard about when I was in the K-8s. And I thought, wow, that sounds really interesting, because what the program does is sort of, we teach the life skills of perseverance, goal setting, those types of things, teamwork, self-acceptance, through the process of training for and running either a half marathon or marathon. And it's really a beautiful program because it's very inclusive. No one has to have any experience coming in to DreamFar. They would not even have to run a mile ever in their life before. We have students that, yes, some are on the cross country team, Others have never even walked around the block before. We have other students that have moved in from other districts, don't know anybody. Other students have been ELL or EL learners, so they don't really are not really comfortable with English. And running is a really nice way of being with other people. You don't necessarily have to talk. You're just kind of together in the moment, all working on sort of a challenging goal and getting each other through it. So when I went to the high school, they were looking for people to help mentor. And I was like, yes, please. I would love to do that. And so I did that for 2 years as a mentor. We used to work out of the Brookline Teen Center on Saturday mornings, joining up with other schools in the area. So we joined up with schools from Boston, Newton, both of the Newton high schools, Needham, Wellesley. And then during the week, we run with the students 2 to 3 times a week at our own high schools, doing shorter runs and then our long runs together on Saturday mornings. We've since transitioned. Now we run out of a place in Newton Center, but it's the same type of feeling. We all get together, and it's a really nice opportunity for students in Brookline to also not only make connections with each other, but also with students in other surrounding communities. So it's been really great. We are the first mentor program that for marathon training. And since we began in, I think like maybe 14 years ago, 15 years ago at this point, we've gotten over 1,300 students across a finish line, which is really incredible. And it's been really rewarding. And I would say that through the process, it's really helped a lot of students gain a lot of self-confidence. I've seen students that did not have any friends or any confidence and barely spoke. By the end of the season, you can't shut them up. So I've really seen the tremendous change in the students from this. And I know, Matt, are you able to switch over to some of the quotes that were given? That this is feedback from students. Some of the things that they said is, I have become more confident in my ability to do anything I set my mind to. I've realized that I can set goals and accomplish them after completing a really hard goal. I believe in myself more, and I somewhat enjoy running. And let me see. I also feel more confident in my ability to make new friends with people I haven't interacted with before. It proved to me that I can do hard things. So as you can see, I really believe in it. And so many of our students have also, some of the mentors, what ends up happening is they actually come, the mentees, the students actually come back once they graduate and they become mentors. So it's been just a really great thing. And I've been the leader at Brookline High the last 4 years. Yeah, so that is a little bit about what I do and why I find it so important. And I've just seen how it transforms students that I've worked with.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you, Robin. All right. And then last and certainly not least, we have Doug Delory, and he's one of the clinical coordinators of the Bright program, which I know a lot of folks are familiar with. And so I'll turn it over to Doug.
Thank you, Matt. All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Douglas Delory. I'm one of the Bright program clinical coordinators at Brookline High School and a licensed mental health counselor. Thank you for having the opportunity to have Bright here tonight and share briefly about the work we do at the high school. Like many transitions in life, when a student at Brookline High School experiences an extended absence from school, the transition can often be complex and hard to navigate. Bright supports the student, the family, and the faculty during this transitional process. The first slide highlights the mutual symbiotic relationship Bright has within the larger school community and existing school supports. These highlighted areas are the alleviated pressure points, the strengthening mutual relationship between multi-tiered support systems, a safe space Bright offers when a student returns to school while not necessarily being ready or able to return to all their classes when upon their first arrival. And then centralized communication. These all represent faculty members that play a role in supporting a student's transition. The next slide highlight 3 components of the program that are central to a student's support. That's the Bright Room, the dedicated staff, and the support plans. The Bright Room is staffed all day. We're located on the 3rd floor of the Slunch Gym, and Bright students have access to that room all day, no questions asked. There are many circumstances where I would ask questions, but having a student know that there's a safe place to go is often enough for them to remain in school for the whole day. Dedicated staff. Bright has 2 clinical coordinators, myself and Amy Corral. We handle the care coordination, the family support, and the clinical interventions, as well as an academic coordinator. The academic coordinator helps returning students academically and coordinates with faculty around assignments and teacher communication. And then lastly, the support plans. Each Bright student has a student-specific support plan with interventions that integrate existing layers of student support inside and outside of school. And then lastly, Bright outcomes. This is my favorite slide that I use in any kind of presentation, and it really gives a picture of the data that communities that have Bright programs, some of the results that they show. And I just want to give a minute for people to look at some of these. Some of the big ones that I really like, that really stand out for me, are the data on self-harm and substance use and rehospitalization. And then I just wanted to say thank you again for having me tonight, Matt, and thank you to the whole school committee. And I hope you all have a wonderful night.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I'm so appreciative of my colleagues joining me here this evening. And I think we've given you sort of a little snapshot into the work. Honestly, we could have been here for about 2 hours to talk about all the really good work that is happening in schools. But thank you all for this recognition.
All right, thank you very much. Any questions from school committee members? Helen?
Well, I don't have a question, but I have a couple of responses. First of all, as a social worker, I really appreciate all the work that you guys do. It's tremendous and really important. But also, Doug, you should know that at the Brookline Center event on Tuesday night, both Sarah and myself were there, and the people who presented, the young woman and her mother, were graduates of Bright, of the high school, and of our Brookline Bright program. And it was the most amazing story of what Bright did for this family and how it maintained her in school. This was a child who was suicidal, and the amount of work that went into it. So thank you all for all the, I mean, I happened to pick out Bright, but because that just happened and we just heard it. But I think you should all know that it's wonderful, and thank you for your hard work.
Stephen?
Thanks, David. I just want to say thanks to everyone for this presentation. I don't remember getting such a deep dive into social emotional learning curriculum before, and I found this really interesting because I didn't know a lot of it, and I just liked learning a lot of these details. So I just want to ask Matt if you would consider making this or a version of this into a presentation for a more formal discussion that could be docketed at some future meeting of school committee or of the curriculum subcommittee, because I'm really curious to know specifically how curricula are identified and selected at PSB, and what evidence bases are used, or what evidence bases there are behind some of these curricula. I mean, I know that this school committee has a lot of enthusiasm for SEL in particular, like we enshrined it behind that 6th goal. We specifically called out SEL as something that we want to get behind. But I also know that the evidence bases behind a lot of SEL curricula is contested, is controversial, is just simply difficult to assemble. So in such a complex area, I'd be really interested to learn more about your philosophy and the philosophy of practitioners in determining what curriculum they use and how they use it in the classroom or in schools. So thank you very much.
Yeah, and Stephen, so I think the timing for this spring is a really good time to docket that. And so I'd welcome either full school committee or curriculum subcommittee. It's really, really strong work that I'm really proud of, and we've been really thoughtful about that. So I think that the timing of that works out really well.
So I have just one other thing to say, that to the audience and to you guys. Bright was founded here in Brookline 20 years ago. It was a combination, Robert Wood Johnson grant that we got with the Brookline Community Mental Health Center. And the head of the center, Dr. Huck White, brought it to, we started in Brookline. It went from Brookline across Massachusetts and now across the country. So I think it's something we can be very proud of here in Brookline.
Mariah?
Thanks. I just wanted to say what a lovely presentation I thought this was, and how proud I am as a district that we have really focused on this in recent years and invested in this area, and really the positive changes that you all are making, and joining colleagues, having a bigger program in this area to really support our students so meaningfully, and having the social workers alongside the guidance counselors as well. I wanted to say thank you in particular to Ms. Monahan from Lawrence, who is our K-2 guidance counselor and such a wonderful, caring person. I've gotten to know her so well over the past couple of years, and I'm so grateful for her. And I imagine my experience is just a microcosm of the many day in, day out experiences that parents and other caregivers have with that support, as was alluded to in that lovely letter that was written from that parent. And I just wanted to reflect, as we heard about the sad passing of Nurse Miller, that when I was a student at Lawrence, first off, Nurse Miller was this wonderful, wonderful person in the school who was always just the most caring, and yet she wasn't flowery. She was very direct, and it was wonderful, thinking of another person who can be present in students' lives and support them. But I also remember having what we called Good News Fridays, which is actually very similar to the community meeting that was described, and having the students all come together, and students would be nominated to get a good news pin. And you were the good news, you received the good news of the week for whatever it is you had done. So it's really lovely to me to see these sort of legacies of care and really leading in this thoughtfulness for students as whole people. So thank you all for the continuing work. I really am touched.
All right, anyone else? Okay.
With that, we present the Public Schools of Brookline Spotlight on Excellence as awarded to the PSB clinical team, with gratitude and appreciation for the critical work of the clinical teams throughout the district, which provide a continuum of support to our students to advance their feeling of community, belonging, and social emotional well-being. Congratulations.
All right, congratulations indeed. And with that, we will move to public comment. Our first speaker, Mr. Paul Hanna.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, Superintendent Gilroy, school committee members. Thanks for allowing me to speak today. It's fortuitous I get to make some comments that are relevant after this lovely presentation on social emotional learning at our schools and the support that's provided from our schools to the students. I have 3 kids and peers. I am also a Palestinian American, and my children identify as Palestinian American. They are aware of the war that's going on, as we all are. They are aware of the devastating toll it has, particularly on children. What I want them to be is in a school community where they can embrace their identity without being fearful or worried about how others will react. If I may, personally speaking, I've been reluctant to wear my keffiyeh, which I got in Jerusalem many, many years ago, because of the sensitivities of this community and the respect I wanted to provide to other people, and I didn't want to offend or send the wrong message. But that makes me a bit sad. And I don't want my children to feel like they have to hide or limit who they are and how they identify in the multitude of ways that they identify. So I come here today, just very simply, that I want to make sure the schools and teachers in our community recognize that pro-Palestinian sentiment or demanding of a ceasefire is not something that should be construed as hateful speech, nor as supportive of terrorism or as an affront to any person or group or individuals. I would like the schools to be able to check in on our students, Arab American students, Palestinian American students, and I would note that it's a diverse group. There are Palestinian Americans who are Muslim, there are some who are Christian, there are some who are secular. So the full Arab community is quite a diverse group. I just want to make sure that our schools are aware of what they're going through and allow them to be who they are without any imposition on what that might mean and what that might mean on other people. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hanna. Next, we have Mr. Colin Stokes.
Hi, I'm Colin Stokes, parent of a current 9th grader who at BHS, excuse me, who's taking and enjoying the Responding to Literature pilot. I'm also a town meeting member in Precinct 7. I want to thank those of you who voted against continuing the leveled 9th grade English courses. You understand that these are outdated and segregated classes, and they're currently harming students. And I think all of you see that the school's teachers and administrators have invested years of research, writing, practicing, and planning to create something really special in this pilot, a way to bring all 9th graders together to learn about literature, philosophy, language, and each other. You see that the curriculum is having a successful and popular launch and as a pilot this year, as shown by the astoundingly data-rich presentation by a united group of high school teachers. I am disappointed, though, that a majority of the school committee chose to slow its implementation. Your reasoning was that there was insufficient data to determine if the pilot was successful, to which the high school's leaders rightly pleaded what data exactly would deem it successful. Some of you expressed interest in evidence that academic gaps between children of color and white children are closing after 1 year. Some expressed interest in evidence that recommendations for honors classes would be more equal in subsequent years. Some may want for no students to complain that the class is boring. But putting aside the reasonableness of any of these expectations, the point I want to make is that none of these reflect the stated goals of the pilot. What I heard in their presentation was that it is a crucial part of an effort to create a diverse 9th grade community. Along the way, it does remove one structural barrier to equity. The new class would allow for students to be recommended for 10th grade honors English based on the same criteria across the grade instead of 9 different 8th grades. This may or may not lead to dramatic change on its own, but it does allow for a new leverage point to try things. But the pilot course was not conceived as a remedy for academic gaps. It was not imagined to solve bias or erase every other disparity in the system or compensate for the innumerable structural differences that children experience in the US and in Brookline because of their skin color. And if we are hoping for data that connects this single class to any of these things, we will be disappointed. Please assess it on what it is designed to do, building community and engaging students. And to my neighbors and fellow parents who expressed fear and concern about the new class, I get it. This all feels like a huge competition, and every way we can help get our kids ahead feels crucial. But when we put that race above all else, we risk losing the real fight, which is to prepare our children to thrive and build a better world. As Thurgood Marshall said, unless our children begin to learn together, there is little hope that our people will ever learn to live together. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mr. Stokes, and that concludes public comment for today. We will now move on to presentations and discussions of current issues. And first up will be Dr. Dubois with a presentation on student attendance.
All right. Hi, everyone. Again, thank you so much for having me present this evening on attendance. And so this is obviously a topic that we have been deeply interested in over the past several years. This is something that school districts throughout the Commonwealth, throughout the country are thinking about deeply and are, in some cases, really struggling with. And as we think about attendance, and I hope this is reflected as we think about, as I talk about some of the next steps, but attendance is this really good example, and what makes it really complex is this really good example of something that we really need to be thinking about a child's entire ecosystem, really taking an ecological perspective, because there are so many variables in a child's life that influences their ability to attend school consistently. And so we're going to talk about that as we think about some next steps. To start our time together this evening, I wanted to anchor this conversation and some of the goals that we have around attendance. And to begin with, and this is law, this is also policy, but certainly a goal, that we want to make sure that every single student is able to attend school every single day that they're able to, are able to arrive to school on time and can stay throughout the school day. So of course there's policy, there's law, but when we think about the importance of this is we believe deeply that we are creating a range of academic, social, and emotional experiences at school that you simply can't replicate outside of the school day. And so we looked at the pandemic that had very real consequences in all those areas. And so we know that showing up to school every single day, accessing those experiences are so important for kids' development. For us, and again, this is law, this is also policy, it's really important that we're accurately recording the attendance of every single student every single day. It's really common that we are delivering and starting interventions based on a student's attendance. And so it's really important that we know at any given time a student's attendance level, and then we're providing support when challenges arise. And that leads into this third bullet. When you look at the literature around attendance, the thing that is most clear is that it is really important to provide intervention as early as possible. That's the case with many problems. We want to intervene as early as possible. But something like chronic absenteeism, something like school refusal, those can escalate pretty quickly, where we sort of have this problem that becomes deeply complex, really hard to treat pretty quickly. And so the first sign that a student is struggling with school, we want to make sure that we're providing support, and really need to be moving away from a place where we don't wait until a child is chronically absent before we're providing them support. And then finally, as we're thinking about this work, it is really important in all of our buildings, in a really consistent way, we're communicating to families and to kids and to other stakeholders expectations around attendance, so that everybody sort of knows what to expect. And then we're also moving in the same direction when when attendance becomes challenging. And so here I have our chronic absenteeism data for the past several years. And this is one of the primary metrics that DESE will use when they're looking at attendance. And to remind folks, chronic absenteeism is missing 10% or more of school days in which you're enrolled. There's no difference between excused or unexcused. They're combined to look at this chronic absenteeism number. And what I want to frame here is that we were concerned with attendance before the pandemic. And so you see that trend starting in 2016, 2017, and going into school year 1920. We were seeing more kids missing more school days. And that was something we were absolutely talking about within schools, that we were noticing that this was an increasing issue, and we were thinking about how to address it. And then, of course, the pandemic hit. When you look at that data point from school year 2021, that's not a particularly reliable data point. And so that's a year where we were hybrid for most of the year. It was really hard to record attendance. And so I'd encourage us to sort of put an asterisk on that and not really think about that within our trend data. Coming out of the pandemic in school year 21-22, we saw that our chronic absenteeism rate doubled. And attendance was such an issue throughout the Commonwealth that DESE actually created a new chronic absenteeism statistic, where they were, in addition to looking at that 10% number, they're also looking at students who missed 20% or more of school days. And so you see there, our rate was 3.2% in 21-22. Last year, we saw a modest decline at that 10% number, where about 14.5% of students were chronically absent. A more meaningful decrease for that 20% number, where we dipped to 2.6%. And now, so I ran the attendance report yesterday. And so right now we are sitting at 11.1% of students are chronically absent, and with that 20% number being 2.2. So that's a pretty meaningful decline. And I think it's important that we're having this conversation right now. It's also a really interesting time to have the conversation. I'm going to show a slide in a second, but hopefully we're coming out of cold and flu season. As a dad with 3 young kids, it's been a rough 4 months. But we typically see right around now is when our chronic absenteeism will sort of peak. Right, kids have, for very legitimate reasons. Right now, if you've been absent from school 12 times, you are considered to be chronically absent. And so there are many kids who, because of being out for a week with COVID or flu or cold-like symptoms, have missed 12 days of school. And sort of to demonstrate that, at this time point last year, it was 17.5% of students were chronically absent. And then we finished the year at 14.5%. And so right now, if we sort of landed in this place, our relative to last year, I should say, relative to last year, we're down about a third. And then if we were to stay in this place at 11.1%, at the end of the school year, we'd be down about 20% by the end of the school year. What I want to name here, as folks appreciate, this 11.1% number includes all pre-K through 12. If we removed students who are in pre-K or in kindergarten, where attendance is mandatory, that number would be at 10.2%. And so here I want to sort of disaggregate it, sort of give you a fuller picture of our attendance data. And so here you're looking at this chronic absenteeism rate. And so these are the percentage of students in that grade level who have missed at least 10% of school days. And we see in pre-K and kindergarten and in first grade, where kids have a lot of illnesses, pre-K and kindergarten, attendance is required. We have our highest rates here. Then we sort of have some stability as we move into elementary school and middle school.
Sorry, Matt.
Yes.
Is this year to date, or is this a norm?
This is as of yesterday. Yep.
Okay, thanks.
And as with the high school, what I do want to sort of draw your attention to, we're looking at full day absences here. At the high school, a lot of our conversations anchor around at the class level missing classes. But here you're looking at students who at least 10% of school days have been called out by a guardian and or who have missed at least 3 class periods. If kids have missed at least 3 class periods, they're coded as absent in our student information system. We do have a range within our K-8s. And so you see that range going from 9.3% to 17.5%. And so one of the really important things as we're thinking about this work is we do want to have some consistency in practices. Of course, there are variables in our schools that might influence this number, but we certainly want to be approaching it in a really consistent way. And one thing I want to name, for example, in the building that's at 9.3%, that's a school that's particularly diligent around running attendance reports and sending out attendance letters. That's not the only reason, I'm sure, that the number's at 9.3%, but we know that's a really strong practice that has an evidence base behind it. And so we want to continue to be thinking about those practices that are high leverage, that are high impact, and making sure that we're using those across all of our buildings. And so this is what I was sort of talking. So here you're looking at chronic absenteeism by month. And so we started off relatively strong in September, October, then cold and flu season hits, and you see this pretty meaningful spike in chronic absenteeism. We also typically see higher rates of chronic absenteeism in months where there's a school vacation week. Not uncommon for families to take a vacation either leading into school vacation week or immediately following school vacation week, and that impacts that number as well. And so our hope is, based on history, and that's reflected here with this 10.8% number in March, is that would sort of be around that level as we move into April, May, and June. I know folks are oftentimes interested in the percentage that are excused versus unexcused. It's split pretty evenly. So 47% of absences are a result of something that's not covered in our policy. So, for example, taking a vacation during when school is in session. And the other half are for reasons that are cited within our policy. And then I wanted to pull out, when we've talked about attendance in the past, we have surfaced some pretty real discrepancies between student groups. Those discrepancies tend to mirror discrepancies that we've talked about in other presentations around MCAS, academic performance, belonging. And so I wanted to offer those here just to orient you to these stacked graphs. The red part are students who are chronically absent, and that number on top is the number of students within that category. And so you see students who are Latinx, students who are Black or African American, or have higher rates of being chronically absent. For context, at the end of last school year, the number was at 21% for both groups. Looking at students with IEPs versus without IEPs, we do see there's a difference. That's not completely unexpected, however. So we know one of the major reasons that kids do come to access more support is difficulty with school attendance. We also know that there are a lot of kiddos who are on IEPs due to mental health challenges that can impact school attendance. And so this is improved pretty meaningfully, though. So at the end of last year, this number was at 24%. And so now it's sitting at 16%. And so still discrepancy, maybe not surprising, but we are seeing improvements there. Here, we're looking at students who participate in Steps to Success, students who participate in MECO. We're not seeing a meaningful difference here for chronic absenteeism for students who are in MECO. We are seeing for students in Steps. Sophia, who's the director of Steps to Success, we actually met earlier in the week to look at attendance data. And I think this is a really good example of trying to, our approach to attendance has to extend outside the school day. And we really need to be thinking about how it is that we're supporting kids and families and thinking about all of those variables that are influencing kids' ability to attend school consistently. All right, so what are we doing to help support this work? And so, as I framed in the beginning, early identification is really, really important. And so it is really common for principals and vice principals and secretarial staff to be running reports really frequently so that we have updated understanding of this of the students who are missing school. We also have some teams within our buildings that are dedicated to attendance. So that's the purpose of the meeting, and they're running attendance reports and thinking about intervention. All of the graphs that I just showed you actually came from a group called Open Architects, and you might have heard that name before. But that's a contract that we've just signed with this group. And what Open Architects does is they essentially plug into our data system. So they plug into Aspen, and they're pulling out data every single evening to then create dashboards for folks so you have really updated information, in this case with attendance. And so this is something that's the teams are going to start using. So they have really updated information around attendance. What we're also thinking about is when we are notifying families that attendance is a concern, is that we want to make sure that that outreach is supportive, right? We don't want it to feel abrasive. We don't want it to feel punitive. We want that to be really supportive. One example of that work is me and Mike Chan, who's the attendance officer. We're working closely with the high school to think about really leveraging home visits as a powerful tool to really help us build relationships with families and really understand more deeply the things that are impacting attendance, things that are making it hard for kids to come to school every single day. And so we're building out a home school visit protocol that anybody who's doing a home visit can sort of rely upon to make sure that's a really high leverage practice. And I just showed it in the presentation that preceded this, we know that belonging, how it is that a kid feels when they're in the building, that makes a really meaningful impact on their ability to attend school every single day. We know kids with strong belonging are more likely to show up to school every day. We know kids who exhibit low belonging makes it a lot harder to show up every day. We also know emotional regulation is really, really an important skill for kids. It's not uncommon where kids will wake up and are feeling nervous or worried about attending school. And we want kids to have skills available to them so they can manage and influence those feelings and still come to school and get the support that they need. So I showed this earlier here, but I'm not surprised that as we've seen increases in belonging, as we've seen increases in emotional regulation, that would be partnered with increases in attendance, which we've seen as well. I was actually asked the question in another meeting earlier this week of sort of like aspirationally, if we had to sort of think about best case scenario, what a chronic absenteeism number would look like. And some of that's conceptual. So if you think about in an MTSS paradigm, you'd sort of think we would want to reserve our most intensive supports and interventions to maybe about 3, 4, 5% of students. So that might be the number that we're shooting for. Because we know there are kiddos with really meaningful mental health challenges that are going to have those difficulties impacting their ability to attend school. And so we've worked really hard this year to make sure that we have really strong community partners where when kids need more mental health services, we're able to provide them readily. I've talked about our partnership with Cartwheel before, and so that's a group that provides rapid access to virtual counseling for kids. They also have a parent coaching piece, which we've actually been able to link quite a few families to, usually actually around school refusal, around school phobia. And they give parents a lot of explicit coaching on what does the morning routine look like? What does an evening routine look like? What does it look like when a student's saying they really don't want to go to school, and how you navigate that? In Stride is a new partner. They're new this year, but they provide really intensive anxiety-focused treatment. And so for kids where anxiety is sort of the major reason why it's hard to attend school, we've been able to link kids and families to the support, and that happens after school. And then finally, the Boston Center. And the Boston Center provides a partial hospitalization program. And so there are times when the most important thing in a student's life is targeting their mental health needs. And so the Boston Center offers typically a 2 or 3 week-long program that's really intensive, really helping stabilize kids and their families so that they're going to be more available to school. And we've been able to have some students access that program, and then being able sometimes, as Doug sort of talked about, re-entering through the Bright or a similar program. All right, and then finally, I am really excited about what Open Architects is going to offer us in terms of really at any given moment having a really deep understanding of attendance trends. We're going to use this for other data sources as well, but something that Michelle Herman and I are working on is making sure that administrators and clinical teams and counselors and VPs throughout the district have a really good understanding of that tool and they can use it effectively. We are in a place where most, I think everybody agrees that attendance letters, notifications, really important. It's also a really cumbersome process. Physically going into Aspen, generating the reports, sending out the letters takes a lot of time. And so we're exploring ways to automate that letter to sort of ease up some of that burden. And then finally, as part of the strategic plan, as some folks may have seen, we've built in this creation of an attendance working group. And internally, we want to make sure we are exhausting all of our resources to tackle this issue. We also are in Brookline, and we are wonderfully resourced with so many awesome community partners. And so as part of this working group, we want to, of course, have PSB staff and administrators, but we also want to have students and parents and guardians and university partners and community partners and small business partners coming together in sort of a think tank and thinking about what are all the resources that we have available to tackle this issue, to make sure that we are addressing every need that a student might have. Okay, that is all that I have, but I imagine folks have some questions.
All right, so thank you very much for that presentation. Who would like to go first with questions or comments? I see that Natalia has her hand raised. Natalia?
Thank you so much. This was a really great presentation. My first question is around the absenteeism excused versus unexcused. Is that something that you pay attention to? And if it is that something that parents should know? Because I always forget to call the nurse to say that when my children are ill.
Yeah, that's just the life of a parent, and that certainly happens. So yeah, so I think it is that is important. So for us, we are going to treat in general excused and unexcused absences. They're both serious in that we know that when kids miss school, they're missing important things. In general, though, when we are excusing an absence, we're saying, okay, there's a for lack of a better phrase, a legitimate policy approved reason why you're missing, like an illness. Things that are unexcused, sometimes we're wondering, what's going on there? So that could potentially be more concerning. And so if we can excuse them, we certainly want to. But when we do see unexcused absences sort of stack up, most of the time it does feel like a more concerning situation.
Thanks. And it is up to the parent. So it's not like who classifies. Like, I mean, this clearly must be a ton of misclassification happening. I don't even know what is an excused versus an unexcused.
Yeah. So that, there is, so the policy cites about 8 reasons that you can miss school. The most common one would be an illness. typically we're not requiring like a doctor's note if it's 1 or 2 days. If it's more than 3 days, typically we'll ask for a doctor's note. But I would say that the most common ones that aren't excused are around like school vacation, or we're just not notified why the absence has happened. And those tend to be the two most common ones.
Mariah?
Thanks. Can you hear me okay? I'm having mic troubles.
Yep.
Okay. Thanks, Matt, for the presentation. My question, well, one thing I wanted to say before that actually was that excused versus unexcused matters more at the high school because of the, right? So just like you don't earn credit if you have, I think it's what, more than 5 for the full year or 3 for the half year, right? So just to say that, like, not only in the future, it does matter more than it does at the elementary. But my actual question was about the parent coaching that you mentioned. And I just wondered what the trigger for that was. And like if there's a limit or how you're parsing that out. I know that there's lots of people who struggle with those same issues of kids who won't leave the house in the morning. I'm just wondering, or if there's a way to get like, I don't know if they've given not seminars, but workshops about this. Is there a way to make this kind of coaching a little more broadly accessible? Maybe it already is and I missed it. I don't know.
No. And I'm actually, we're working on something to actually make this type of support universally available to folks. So hopefully more information on that really soon. With the Cartwheel parenting coach, it's usually just a collaboration with the school counselor and a parent. And so it's not uncommon if attendance has been really hard and a parent saying, yeah, I'm really struggling with this and there aren't other supports in place. Typically we will make that work with the family to make that referral.
So just if I could follow up. So for caregivers who might be listening right now, is there like, and if they haven't been, if someone from the school hasn't approached them yet, but they're feeling worried about it, is there some sort of threshold at which they're eligible, or they should feel comfortable to reach out and see if they're eligible for a referral?
Absolutely that version of it. Yeah. And I would say broadly, anytime you have any concern, please reach out to your school counselor. And absolutely, right. If you're thinking, yeah, I think I need more support or my kiddo needs support, please reach out.
Thank you.
Mariah, I want to expand on one portion that you said there about the K-8 attendance. While K-8s certainly don't do the credit attainment piece, where attendance matters for our K-8 schools is in the school accountability system. So that does impact us on that side for having attendance ranges that fall, I think, below 95% or so.
Is that differentiated excused versus unexcused?
So I don't believe that's the case, but it does impact. I know that it impacts us there. So, but we can get more specific.
Yeah, I just meant that like what kind of absence matters at the high school, but it does, all of them matter, as you say, at K-8.
Absolutely.
An even greater penalty at the high school.
Sarah?
I was wondering if we're using automated systems to send letters out at certain points, knowing that maybe that doesn't really have an impact. So I wanted to ask, if we're not using it, why we aren't, or if we are using it, have we found that more gets accomplished through something that's personalized than just an automated letter?
Yeah. What a beautiful question. So part of the initial letter, so it's a DESE requirement that once a student has their 5th unexcused absence, we have to notify families. That's a requirement. So typically we'll do that with a letter. But I think you're spot on, is that we want to make sure that communication feels really personalized. There's a lot of different reasons why attendance might be challenging, and we never want to make assumptions about that. And so one of the systems that we're really thinking about is how can we have that communication feel much more personalized, so that what comes out of that conversation are a series of very targeted interventions. And so that's one thing that I'm pretty excited about with Open Architects, is that we're going to save all the time on needing to run the reports. We're going to know exactly almost live who those students are, so we can spend more time on those supportive phone calls.
Helen?
So just a quick comment. I think the high school should really be commended here for their attendance rate. I mean, if we look at it, 9th grade especially, at 5.1%, chronic absence is pretty low compared to the state and just our own other rates at other grades. And the high school in general is doing quite well, which is a good sign. Thank you.
Yeah, and I would say that and that's not an accident. They talk about attendance every single day, particularly in all the grades. But in ninth grade, they have put so much work into that building to make sure they're doing a lot of monitoring, a lot of supporting. If you're ever in the building during a transition, they're really making sure that kids are in class. And so that's not an accident that those numbers are so strong.
I'm wondering if we have the data on truancy-based CRA filings.
Yeah, so we have that. It's not a high number. It's a pretty minimal number, and that's not an intervention that's in our go-to first line of interventions. Typically, that's a result of sort of this kind of a last approach, and usually it's in partnership with the family, and the family is on board with that. Most of them are at the high school level, but we don't have a particularly high number of those.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? All right, well, thank you very much for this presentation and discussion. And we will now move to update and discussion summer program refresher, including extended school year, ESY, with Lisa O'Connell and Jody Fortuna.
Well, good evening. Great to be with you. Thank you, Dr. Guillory. I will very briefly set the table and then turn it over to my esteemed colleague, Dr. Fortuna, for the summer school part of this brief presentation. First of all, I had the opportunity to present these slides to our Special Education Parent Advisory Council last month. And the parents and guardians participating in the meeting were very instrumental in providing some feedback around extended school year programming. So when I share those details with you, I just wanted to give a shout out to them for their wisdom and creativity. While summer services and extended school year services obviously have significant differences, the interconnectedness between the Office of Teaching and Learning and student services really is the key to making sure that we're providing equal access and opportunity for all of our students. And to this end, Dr. Fortuna and I have been partners in summer planning meetings and considering differences and similarities between our programs, looking at creative options, and meeting with other stakeholders. So that's been an exciting process. But we'll begin with summer school, and then I will step in a little bit later around extended school year. Jody?
Thank you, Lisa. So summer school, one of the important things is to remember that most of our programs serve one of three purposes, either enrichment, remediation, or credit recovery, which is the case of our high school summer program, which also offers us the chance to offer some enrichment for some of those elective classes that students may not have been able to take during the school year, but they really want to participate in. In both programs, our students with disabilities, in all of our programs, students with disabilities may need accommodations or modifications for participation, and it could be under a 504 plan. You can go to the next slide. So if a program is designed for enrichment, it's designed for accelerated learning. It's often theme-based, and it's generally focused on a particular curricular area, so science, math, history, the arts. So this is where you see things like Lego, robot building, theater programs. Those are all considered enrichment programs. For Brookline, in our portfolio of summer programs, our enrichment programs are generally
generally those programs that take place in the afternoon that are offered by our community partners at Brookline Rec and Base. Next slide, please. And then we have some summer programs that are focused on remediation. This is for our students who have difficulty during the school year mastering required core content. We want to give them that boost so that they're ready for the next school year. And we want to avoid any of the summer learning loss, which research has documented happens frequently for students. Credit recovery, again, is provided during the summer, and it's really to help our students earn the credit that they need to meet our high school graduation requirements. And so here, I would draw your memories to a presentation that I did in December where we went into each of these in detail. But here is a scope of the programs that we offer. Project Discovery really is a remedial program for students that need help in building their literacy skills. We fund Project Discovery out of the general budget. STAR Academy is an enrichment program for our METCO and English our multilingual learners, and that is funded through our METCO and Title III grants. Steps to Success does some really nice career preparation in providing students internships that they can go to, providing them life skills around financial literacy, etc. That is also an enrichment program, and that is funded out of their budget and our partnership that we have, the school community partnership that we have with the Steps to Success organization. The Calculus Project, which we are all familiar with, is enrichment in that it really helps to accelerate the process for our students so that they're ready and they're on a trajectory to take higher level math courses in high school. That's something that we also fund out of our general budget. High school credit recovery, it's in the name, it's credit recovery, and there is that small piece of enrichment that is part of it for those, again, those electives that students may not have been able to take during the school year. That is a fee-based program where students pay to get that credit recovery. And then we have two of our large partners that provide after the summer programming to make it a full day. We have Brookline Adult and Continuing Education, which will offer some offerings for students related to theater, related to robotics. And Brookline Rec also does something very similar to the base program. We try to make the offerings not so similar, so students have different choices. Brookline Rec also runs more of a camp model for the afternoon for our students, and both of those programs are fee-based.
And I'll jump in here. Dr. Fortuna just spoke about the range of summer school options, and these summer school options are also available to all special education students. In that case, to ensure special education accessibility, teams will look at what IEP accommodations or modifications, supplemental aids, perhaps the development of a 504 plan. Teams will look at what a student needs to have full access to that summer school program. And with that, I will transition over to some of the regulatory details about what extended school year is all about.
Sorry, Lisa, do you mind if I jump in for a second? I was about to ask a question of Jody before we moved on, but I was having trouble with my mic. Sorry about that.
Nope.
So I just wanted to ask Jody about the fees for credit recovery. So what would happen if a student needed that for, say, graduation, but had trouble with the fee?
Then it would be subject to our financial assistance policy, and we would provide any financial assistance up into including what that student would need.
Is that only if it's actually needed for graduation, or would it also be if the student wanted remediation or enrichment?
It would be for both because that's what our policy covers.
Okay, so it doesn't matter what the purpose is. Anyone who wants to participate and needs it should be getting financial aid.
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
So extended school year services are not the same as summer schools. So I thought we'd begin by anchoring ourselves in the Individual with Disabilities Education Act. And that is the guidance that we're following. So this is a mandate that offers extended school year services to our students with disabilities that can be provided beyond the normal school day or year in accordance with a child's IEP and at no cost to families. And the IDEA further stipulates that extended school year services are available to provide a free and appropriate education to students and must be provided in terms of what an IEP team determines is essential for that student. The process of determining which students require extended school day services, extended school year services takes place at the annual IEP meeting, but we recognize that if there is a fall IEP meeting, it may make more sense to postpone that conversation to mid-year or spring, and the team can make that decision. Next slide. So we'll talk a little bit more about the process and how recommendations are actually made. We know that the IEP process is designed to address a child's unique needs and goals, and the ESY process considers exactly that, but also considers goal areas where regression is an area of concern. And to consider whether or not a child may regress over the summer, the IEP team examines a variety of sources and data that have been collected throughout the school year, including how the child is doing before and after scheduled breaks, let's say, in the school year. The IEP then team has to decide on what goals and services are crucial for maintenance during ESY. And while services must be offered, parents and guardians are welcome to make other choices and don't have to make a child available. Next slide, please. So in summary, extended school year services are to support a child in maintaining skills they've achieved during the school year, preventing regression, and they're meant to include specific areas of service delivery, always taking into consideration a child's unique needs. Next slide, please. ESY services cannot be considered by regulation for respite care, summer camp, or even summer school. It is not created to help children with disabilities advance in relation to their peers. It's not an opportunity to pre-teach the curriculum. And so we have to consider that in our decision making. Next slide. So the IEP team examines the sources of data, as I mentioned. They look at breaks during the year, and they choose the specific goals and services that are crucial to be maintained during the summer. Next slide. We've established that not all students are eligible for ESY. And we've also talked about the fact that ESY services are designed differently depending on the needs of the student. Some students only need targeted support in one or two areas. So as an example, perhaps a child's identified area for possible regression is in the area of specialized reading. But for another, it may be that the identified area of challenge is social communication and interpersonal skills. And for others, because of a complex disability or disabilities, the child might need multiple services requiring a full day. This year, the Office of Student Services decided to take a closer look at the number of students recommended for ESY, the level of participation, and possibilities for being a little more creative in the provision of services. Next slide. Prior to this year, we have been able to group some students with similar needs into cohorts. For those with more intensive needs, students have been grouped into 5-week programs, 5 hours a day. Others have participated in 4-week programs for 2 hours a day. Still others have come in for individual tutorial work in a specific area. So the scenarios are varied, and we took a close look at each one. Next slide. So this year, we wanted to provide an opportunity for children to practice skills in more natural environments. Practice those exact skills identified for potential regression during the IEP process, but allowing for that practice to occur during some non-academic activities. So it goes without saying that individualized services for specific IEP goal areas will certainly continue. But our 4-week, 2-hour sessions will now be extended to 3-hour sessions that will allow children to practice skills while participating in music, art, theater, culinary arts as well. And our 5-week sessions will now be extended to 6 weeks, remaining at 5 hours a day, also including additional opportunities for music, art, theater, therapy pet programs, culinary arts as well. The idea is, with the support of our occupational therapists, our physical therapists, our speech language pathologists, our special educators, that students will receive those mandated services with a chance to practice these skills in a more natural environment as well. Next slide. So the focus remains on maintaining those important identified IEP skills through participation, continuing with individually determined therapies and activities that promote independence, OT, PT, speech, specialized reading, all those services will continue to be provided. And in addition, students will have the opportunity to practice those specific skills by making choices for the non-academic activities I've mentioned. We plan to pilot this approach this summer and see if participation overall increases, and to look at the data regarding regression to see if regression of skills is lessened as well. And the last thing I'll mention is through our summer program planning meetings, Steps to Success, which you noticed on the summer school list, they offer a work program to their students, and we will be offering 5 work mentorship programs in partnership with Steps to Success, so that 5 students who have applied for summer work will apply for summer work as student role models and mentors in our ESY programs. We're hoping to promote socialization, friendships during those non-academic activities through that partnership. So we will be making some of those connections over the next month as well. As I said before, CPAC has been instrumental in giving us feedback about the additional ESY time, and we will look forward to providing some feedback about these changes and enhancements for our students. That is our update, and I'm happy to take any questions, and Dr. Fortuna as well.
So one question I have in terms of the duration of some of these summer programs, a 4 to 6 week in particular, what determines whether it's 4 or 6? Is that what's indicated by an IEP? Is that just what's practicable for contractual reasons and or family summer planning?
No, it is purely about the IEP and what's recommended for the goal areas where there is concern for regression. And certainly the complexity of disabilities impacts on those identified goal areas and the time required to provide those services.
So are these just the 3 hours a day, 4-week sessions and the 6-week, 5-hour day? Those are just examples of some, but I would imagine that our students are all over the map in terms of what their needs are for hours and frequency.
Yes, I mean, we are able, there are cohorts that can be established, but no question that part of the program also offers that highly individualized programming as needed.
All right, thank you. Helen?
Thank you for this in-depth description. It's really great. I'm wondering, do we have the cost of this program, and is it paid for through circuit breaker, or how is it funded?
Thank you. Most of our extended school year programming is funded through the IDEA grant. That is the 240 grant that addresses a wide range, but the majority of our ESY programming is funded through the grant. And generally, we're allocating $460,000 for summer programming. So not all of it, not 100%, but a significant amount.
Okay, thank you.
Mariah?
Thank you, Jody and Lisa, for the presentation. It's very exciting. I have a couple of questions. I think my first one is for Jody. I wonder if you could speak on the size of each of the programs this year, and I also say like the number of seats that we're holding for each program, and how that compares to last year.
At this point, Mariah, we are planning on having our programs Project Discovery, STAR, Steps to Success, and Calculus Project be similar to what they were in size last year. So for example, STAR Academy has a capacity of about 350 students. They usually have a small wait list. Project Discovery, the invitations have gone out to families at this point, and I can get back to you on the number that we sent, but it is comparable to last year.
Thank you. As a follow-up to that, have the invitations gone out for the other programs here that are like the first 4 programs, I guess it would be? I think I saw a Calculus Project email this past week, so I think I got that one actually.
You did. They have gone out for all the programs.
Okay, that's great. So people have gotten them. And Lisa, could I ask you the same question? Have any of the ESY invitations gone out yet?
They are going out in the next week. We have hired our extended school year coordinators who are now taking the steps to hire the specific staff for programming. And as I said, the letters are going out with the new parameters in the next week.
I have a couple more questions, David.
Sure.
My next question is about the interplay between between ESY and the other summer programming. And so this is maybe a question for both of you, but maybe more a question for you, Lisa. Can you talk about how students who are in anyone who would be eligible for any one of multiple of these programs participate, and also what arrangements you've made possibly with the partners for students who, for example, whether they're at, for example, Project Discovery, and then, because I think that's the morning program, like, is there afternoon supports? And then similarly for ESY, do we have partnerships set up and transportation if it's a different location? Is that question clear? It's clear, right? Yes. Okay.
It is, because you have been instrumental in working with OSS in terms of, broadening the parameters of ESY. So we thought long and hard about what the time of each program should be to allow for students that, might have ESY in the morning, but wish to transition to an enrichment program in the afternoon. We've looked even more closely if ESY, if a student, for example, is signed up for calculus project, but also requires ESY, that we are prepared to individualize programming to make sure if there's sort of an overlap of programs to make sure that the student receives their entitlement. And we certainly, on an individual case-by-case basis, are addressing transportation concerns. But we have looked very closely. We started out thinking, our 3-hour programming, should it be 8 to 11? Should it be 9 to 12? Would you have enough time to get to an afternoon activity? So that has been, I think we've really improved on the calibration of those programs this year.
Thank you. And 2 more questions, David. Sorry. So for parents and caregivers who might have transportation issues, when they receive their invite, will this sort of be alluded to if there's these other programs? And then if you have an issue with transportation, please let us know so we can talk about it, or like sort of putting it out there so it's not just like you have to know to ask, but because it's such a barrier, right, for participation. So okay.
We've modified the letter, which is one of the reasons why it's a little delayed. I've been looking at it. We want to make sure that exactly we preemptively let families know, definitely call us, reach out if you need to talk through a unique situation within your family where you need support. We really want to make sure that we are, enhancing that process of equal access.
Thank you, Lisa. That's so great. Last question, David. Are these 4-day weeks or 5-day weeks?
They are 4-day weeks.
They are 4-day weeks.
Yes,
okay. So that's still a challenge, but
yeah.
Okay.
It
Okay.
is.
Thank you. I just want to say that when we put this in the budget guidelines earlier this year, I was so grateful for your partnership around this, and I really see the improvement. And honestly, both on the OSS and the OTL side over the past couple of years, I feel like there's been such commitment to summer programming and an enhancement. And I think it's so wonderful to see, and I'm really excited at how it's continuing to develop. So thank you to the OTL team and the OSS team and all of the staff who come together over the summer for this. I'm really excited.
Well, thank you for your vision and for supporting us in making the enhancements.
Just one follow-up question I have, something Mariah mentioned. So the additional practice opportunities through non-academic and enrichment activities, are those potentially going to be open to all students? Because I know we had discussions in other contexts around expanding summer offerings in general.
So for students in extended school year, what we are doing is specific to the students receiving ESY. So we've contracted with Brookline Music School, for example. The high school culinary arts program, they're going to be working with us, similar to theater and arts programming. So what I was specifically speaking to is the increased natural practice opportunities during ESY.
All right, thank you. Stephen?
Thanks, David. Thanks for this presentation. It was really crystal clear. I just have a simple request. Can we put this presentation on the summer programs page for PSB? I believe the materials up there, I know we're doing a whole scale redesign, but just on the interim, I think the materials up there date back to summer 2022. And it's just, there's just a lot of really valuable information. And I think it's presented in a really high level summary kind of way. I think this would really help update the community on not just the offerings, but on the basic categories of summer programming. I don't know, who's that request for?
And thank you for the reminder, because when I spoke with CPAC today, they also will post this presentation.
Great. Dr. Guillory, who am I actually speaking to when I make that request?
We've captured the note and we'll get our communications staff member to put that up.
Okay, thank you.
All right, anyone else? Okay, well, thank you very much for that presentation.
Thank you.
And we will now move to our next agenda item, budget and finance update with Mariah and Dr. Givens.
Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Great. So I'm just pulling up the agenda, and I'm just going to give a quick recap of the FY24 Q2 report. We had that at finance last Wednesday, I think it was. And so Diane Johnson, who is the finance director for administration and finance, did the presentation for us, and you received the information in the packet. And essentially, the takeaway, I think, is that this is through December 31st. So at the halfway point through the year, there is quite a bit of money that is projected in encumbrance, but is not expended yet. And so while there is right now a projected surplus, there is not a lot to take away from that. It is very, very early in the cycle to take away from that. There was a projected surplus in the personnel of about 1.6 million, but again, staff positions are being filled, and that number is constantly changing, and there'll be a much better sense from Susan and her team in the third quarter as they really start to see things getting locked down. Susan, you're here somewhere, I think, online. Is there anything else you want to add to that summary of the operating fund? Okay, I'm going to keep going. And then the other thing that we discussed were all of the funds outside of the operating fund. So all of our federal award or federal grants, state grants, and then the private grants, and then the revolvers. And essentially, I'll give just a couple of highlights. One of them is that Diane provided to us some new information, which was very helpful, which was, for example, splitting out the Title I by the multiple fiscal years of the awards, so that we can start to see how those older fiscal years are going to be spent down, which is great to be able to close out awards in a timely fashion, ensure that we're using all the funds. And she is working through all of this. And it was great to see the evolution of that data that was presented. I'm just trying to see if there's anything else key that I want to highlight. We had a discussion on the fourth page of the, particularly the food services revolver, and just noting again that it is great to see it in a positive balance for the past couple of years and how wonderful that has been. On the last page, it was also highlighted that the facilities use revolving fund is in deficit right now. And that is due to several or more FTEs being allocated to that revolving fund than should have been. And that will be corrected, I believe, by the next report we have, the third quarter. So I think that's,
Mariah,
yeah.
would you just mind repeating that last point? I think I didn't understand it.
Sure. So if you look on the fourth page, which is the revolving funds, you'll see that around 8 down, there are the facilities use account, and some of the custodial staff are charged there. But there are a few too many, I think, charged there right now. So the account is in deficit. They will just adjust that balance. They will
okay.
bring
Thank you.
people back to other accounts. Yeah. So I think that's the high level summary of the Q2 report. And again, it was very helpful to have Diane's summary, and we will be looking forward to the Q3 report at some point in April as we begin to approach the end of the fiscal year. And if there's no more questions on that, I will say that yesterday at Finance, we started the discussion on the FY25 user fees and building rental fees. That was at Finance. And we did not make a recommendation to the committee for the full school committee to consider yet. We're meeting again on the 20th to discuss it. And then after the 20th, I expect we'll have a recommendation to the committee. And on the fourth item, FY25 budget update, there is no update at this point. We will be meeting again next week as a committee, and we discussed the budget last week.
Any questions for Mariah? Seeing none, we will move to mid-year update on superintendent's 2023-2024 goals.
All right, good evening again. So if you recall, the first goal for this year was supervision and evaluation. Again, actively working with building leaders, visiting their schools often, getting in classrooms, also working on problems of practice with them, talking about their evaluations and what are some of the strong areas that they're seeing in their school communities, and then and that's on the instruction side, and then what are areas for that they're working on or concerned about, and what's their plan of attack for supporting folks where they feel that additional resources are needed. So again, the key actions that were listed there, build a visitation calendar. That's something that's well in place. Ensure evaluators communicate timelines. So I've been working with building principals to ensure that they're getting their evaluations in according to the timeline, and we're seeing positive results of that work. I talked about the standards that we're looking at this year around student engagement, so communicating that aspect and engaging in that as we visit classrooms. And then again, visible leadership, and as well as conducting what I call calendar audits with the direct reports. How much time are they actually spending out and about in the building versus sort of in the office? And so that's looking at dedicated time, or looking at their trackers for how they are spending time in the classroom. So we're seeing some great improvements as well. And I'll say that supervision and evaluation will be a goal that you will get tired of seeing, but that's one that's important, and I will keep working with school leaders on that, and we'll focus on different standards or indicators through the years, but that's one that I'm going to stick with. For goal 2, department reorganization, examine the Department of Educational Equity for wider district impact, capacity, and alignment with district values. Again, we've added, or we're maintaining the Assistant Director of Educational Equity, and the expansion that we're looking back at is having equity leads in each of the buildings, and that's part of what's submitted in the budget process. And Susan shared with you all last week that we have moved those leads off to a grant, but that is something that we're looking forward to launching. And Claire is in the process of, has those positions posted, but also engaging in professional development, pre-professional development with the folks that will be engaging in that process. One of the things that I had on here was consider adding another central level position, but of course that's not happening given what we readily know about our current budget status. But that's something that I will keep in the coffers at a time when appropriate to bring back. For goal 3, district coherence. So it's actually very fortunate to have followed Matt's presentation because some of what he talked about there, I'm excited to see that we're starting to make greater inroads into that. But this notion of how do we get our system and parts all working together rather than being overly siloed. This isn't throwing a light switch and saying, waving a magic wand and making this happen. This will be deliberate actions that will continue occurring. So with that, I have continued the work of the Office of Administration and Finance realignment. That work, we did work with the finance portion of it. This year, we're focusing heavily on human resources. Continue reviewing, revising, and improving the budget development, building, management, and refinement process. That's going to be ongoing work to make our budgeting process stronger, more transparent, and responsive to district needs. Continue examining opportunities for town and school efficiency. So continuing to work with the administrator and looking for possibilities of how we may leverage our budgets to support one another. By May or June, I'll give another update on that because he and I are contemplating a couple of ideas there. Increase the collaboration between OTL, OSS, OAF, and OEE for greater and more continuous support throughout the district. You're seeing greater partnerships between the offices working together to support both staff and student initiatives. Establishing data dashboards that provide real-time information for greater informed decision-making. And so you heard Matt share an important investment that we've made in Open Architect tonight, which is great for the departmental level, but I'm also looking for how we can now bring this up so that we can see this at a district level. What are the big pieces of data or information that we need at the senior-most level portion of the district to make better decisions or informed decision? And then the ongoing work around curricula to ensure that we're on the leading edge of research, of rich learning for our student experience. And that includes our equity-based initiative, our diversity initiatives, and making sure that our students can see themselves in the curricula. And Jody shared at our last meeting the work that Hill Research is doing in looking at the road to adopting an ELA curriculum for our elementaries. And then goal 4 is the governance core. Again, this notion of how does the superintendent and the school committee continue working together to build and codify shared understanding of our roles within the organization. There's continued work that we will engage in that area, as well as part 2 of what we engaged in the summer. So that gives us a quick synopsis of sort of the work that's happening and ongoing. And then I'll certainly be submitting the evidence portions of this with my submission in later on the school year. So with that, I stand for any questions you may have.
Anyone? All right, seeing none.
No, I got some questions.
Sorry. Okay, go ahead, Stephen.
Thanks. Thanks, Scott, Dr. Guillory. I guess I'm wondering if there's any kind of interim benchmarks that you could present to us to help us gain some more transparency into progress towards these goals. Like I'm thinking, can you go back to goal 1? Thanks. So for instance, with this, are there evaluation protocols or documents or something like that the school committee could review examples of? I would just love to be able to gain some more insight into the work that you've done so that we can have better understanding of it?
That's definitely possible. So I'm happy to share that with you if you feel that would be useful to you at this time. You have to remember that the evaluation process is ongoing. So I have my notes that I capture when I'm visiting and taking notes with schools as school leaders, as well as giving them feedback or suggestions on the work that they are doing there. But
Yeah,
it's
I
really
think
sort of
anything.
the work of working with them. So examining their artifacts also is part of that work.
Okay, whatever you think is appropriate. I was just thinking that this was docketed more as a way of helping us gain a better understanding of progress towards goals, and it felt more like a review of the goals. So, so if there are documents that can help us gain a maybe a more just more insight into that progress. I mean, I know you've done a ton of work around this goal, for instance. So just ways that could help us gain some visibility into that. I think that would be really interesting to me, for instance.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that.
Thanks.
Mariah, did you have your hand raised at one point?
I did.
Go
Sorry, I
ahead.
didn't realize it had gone down. I have two questions. One is not really a question, it's a comment. And it goes back to my comment last week. Which I think Lina said you were going to contextualize within this presentation. And my comment was that in the superintendent's report, I thought it would be really great to have a portion where you sort of give us your overarching thoughts on things that week, whether it's about a topic or the district as a whole. And I'm wondering if you could take a minute to talk about that approach to things and that sort of bird's eye view that you have and have what would be whether that could be woven into the reports that you give us.
Yes, so I certainly right now what's big top of mind is all things budget right now. So and I wanted to shift this once we got a little bit further in the budgeting process, once you all take the actual vote on the budget. So what the big project or the big part of what we're doing is right now is identifying those suggestions that we're going to bring to you next week, going through a systematic process of making sure that all of our ducks are aligned, all of our information is accurate with what we're bringing forward for suggestions or recommendations. So that's been the crux of the work that's been happening since essentially January, when we knew that the budget was coming in over our allotment. That's the big focus of that's just top of mind for me.
Do you think that you can give us those sorts of summaries, like as part of your every week update, sort of as I don't know what the equivalent of a secular homily is, but a secular homily.
No, it's and it's fair to do that, and I took a note as I was going through the update tonight too, because I think that's an opportunity to even bring in. I used to give you all sort of the confidential memos that had a lot of that information in it. So I think bringing that up to the public front to talk about the compelling work that's actually happening, I think will be helpful as well to understand what we're doing and what's happening in the organization, and then what I'm thinking about it as well. So that's fair.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a lot of times we get a lot of individual instances like of all the exciting work that's being done in the district. And I think being able to contextualize them and tie them together into a story that people can rally behind and start to understand how it fits into a district, into the strategic plan, and making those connections is really valuable to have all of us, myself particularly, I'll speak for myself only, to have me understand how all of the things that we're hearing about in the superintendent's report or in your weekly newsletter or any messaging is really tied to the plan. I always am struck by and I repeat it all the time, I think you said your mentor when you were in Texas, the one who said, keep the main thing, right? Isn't that what he said? Keep the main thing the main thing. And so
Yeah.
how do we know though, how do we bring this all back to the main thing, right? And so we're all keeping our eyes on the prize and what that is. The other thing that I wanted to ask about is one of these goals. Do you mind toggling them through them again real quick? Just so I can refresh my memory. I think it's maybe the third one. Yeah, so I think so, but well, it doesn't necessarily need to tie to any of them, but now that we have the strategic plan in place, do you think that this is looking ahead a little bit, that your goals next year will be tied more closely? These aren't not tied to the strategic plan, but I guess I'm wondering, will they continue to be personal goals that stand alone, or will they be more integrated with the strategic plan? And maybe you don't have the answer yet, but I'm just curious about how they
Yeah, I want to think
support
about
each
that.
other.
I want to think about that a little bit more. I certainly want to have things that nest together, so that it then feeds into this notion of coherence. But also, these are sort of points of opportunities to improve the organization that I single out. So I think there's definitely opportunity to do that, but I want to leave myself some flexibility to consider it.
Thank you.
If you're saying something, Mariah, we can't hear you.
I think she said no. I just said thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, anyone else? Okay, then we will, thank you very much, Dr. Guillory. We will move to subcommittee and liaison reports. Helen, capital improvements.
So I'm actually going to wait till next time to do my report.
Okay. Would anyone on the curriculum subcommittee like to provide an update? Okay. Valerie, DEIJ?
No updates since our last meeting. Next meeting is on April 1st.
Mariah, you already talked a fair amount about what happened at the finance meeting, but do you have anything further?
Nope, that covers it. Thank you for asking.
All right. Val, anything for government relations?
No, we sent out thank you notes and have gotten some good feedback from the legislators, but nothing substantive.
All right, go ahead, Dr. Guillory.
Val, you just reminded me on government relations. I do want to announce that the Tri-County Superintendent Group is having a legislative breakfast on March 28th down in Norwood. And again, this is an opportunity for superintendents as well as our legislators to get together as a large group to sort of talk about what our big needs are. We've certainly had our legislative meeting here in Brookline, but this is one for that consortium of about 33 districts or so. So that is March 28th.
All right, policy will next be meeting on Monday, March 11th. Any additional liaison updates, Stephen?
Hi, sorry, I was muted. Yes, I would like, so the sustainability, whatever we're called, we met and we coordinated, but I would like to make a request of Dr. Guillory and Dr. Fortuna, if they're still here. We need assistance disseminating a teacher survey for one of the 4 subgroups. Is it possible to, for the administration to help send out that survey to Brookline educators? It's to gather information that would help us complete the inventory part of the of that task, so we can move on to the recommendations phase.
Dr. Fortuna is aware and will work on it.
Okay, thank you.
I can update on negotiations. So I've stepped down from chairing negotiations for personal reasons. Suzanne is taking that over and is carrying on our discussions with the BEU, which are currently about impact bargaining for extending BEEP to a full school day. And the next meeting with the BEU appears to be on March 26th.
All right, any other updates? Seeing none, do we have any new business? Seeing that,
one note, David.
Yes.
We have a couple of possible dates from Metco HQ should the school committee be interested. And I think we may be in meeting at Metco HQ for one of our meetings before the end of the school year. So I don't know how you'd like me to coordinate the possible identification of a date. But if there's interest, I would like to arrange that.
all right, we could certainly try to make that work. So we'll coordinate together on that.
Okay, thanks, David.
All right, now we had a proposed executive session docketed, but it was for the specific purpose of collective bargaining with the BEU. And we do not have need for an executive session for that purpose at this time. So that concludes our agenda. We are hereby adjourned.